All right. Welcome, everybody.
Hey, hello everyone. GM.
Yeah, GM indeed. See everybody's active in the chat. Appreciate everybody tuning in for session 2 of the Vibe Camp here at ApeChain. We're really excited to dive in. I'm Ryan Smith here at ApeChain. I'm a product developer on the team. Recently came onto the team about 2 months ago. But this is an area that I'm really passionate about because I do a lot of vibe coding in my own life. I think it allows us to, you know, get things out to that minimum viable product stage so we can test customer demand a lot quicker than we used to. And, as a product engineer, that's incredibly important to be able to test ideas quickly against a real market and then, discard or kind of expand on the idea as needed. So, today's session is going to be all about product ideation. Like, how do you even come up with an idea of what to build on ApeChain? And I know, a lot of you already have ideas. Some of you have reached out to me or other team members, kind of chatting about, what you want to build during this kind of camp. But if you don't have an idea already, we want to kind of give you some tips and tricks of, what ApeChain's looking for, what the ApeCoin ecosystem as a whole potentially needs as apps, and then also some ideas to come up with things based on what you do in your everyday life. So we'll cover different categories, how to do ideation, what constitutes maybe a good idea versus a bad idea, and how you can even kind of play test some of these ideas. So I'll be kind of starting the conversation today, and we'll be having head of Ape, Cam, join us, which is going to be incredibly exciting, to have him here as well, because I know he has a lot of insight into what he wants to see built here on ApeChain, what some of the overall goals are, that we're trying to achieve as an ecosystem, and, a lot of kind of strategic insight from his background working, throughout culture with Yuga and stuff like that. So we're going to be excited to have him as a guest as well. And speaking of, he's here.
Hello.
So popping up on screen right now. All right, yeah, good. I was gonna say, I think that he goes into CIA mode sometimes, and he puts on the little webcam protector, just so nobody spies on all the dope stuff we're cooking up at ApeChain and ApeCoin. But welcome. It's Cam. It's head of Ape. Needs no introduction really. But yeah, CEO of ApeCo. Cam, how are you doing today?
I'm hoping everyone can hear me. My mic coming through?
It
Yes.
is.
Thank you very much for
Amazing.
coming, Ken.
Appreciate it. I'm glad to be here. Super excited, for what the team's cooked up and for everyone, who's joined in here. So, um, you know, just yeah, really excited to chat with everyone. I can't tell, Ryan. I think I might have lost you as you dropped
No,
off.
I'm here. They
There
just
we are.
changed the
I
view
got
a
you.
little bit to focus
Keeping
on
me on
the.
my toes. You guys are just, playing a little game over here.
I know they like focusing on the main attraction, and I think for the next 20 minutes we wanted that to kind of be you. We would love your insight into the topic of product ideation. We have 300 plus people about to enter into a vibe code camp where they're thinking about what to build in their own lives for Ape Chain and ApeCoin and the ecosystem as a whole. And we would love your perspective on, that topic of how to come up with things, what you would love to see built within the ecosystem. I see some comments in there about, why there's so many shirts. That's
I see a comment saying my voice is Frank Sinatra. So hook that person up. I don't know what extra we can be giving, but just feels like the most accurate comment I've heard maybe ever.
There we
Uh,
go. There we go. All right. So bonus points for Jito here, who
yeah.
we'll send you your prize pack after the show today. Um, but yes, the shirts is for the VIP after party. So, listen to the special code throughout today's session. If you get the special code right, then you'll get invited to that one. All right. Anyways, Cam, without further ado, over to you.
No, appreciate it. And my hope is, to make this as interactive as possible. I know we got the comments going, we got Ryan, I know we got Spend in the crowd, so if it's easier to just Twitter DM. So, I want this to be, as hopefully as informative and helpful to everyone, who's going to be building, going through the camp, as it can be, and also take what I say, as just one viewpoint. My point of view has been, has changed, has grown, has evolved over time, taking in sort of all the people that I've had the chance to work with, work for. And, I hope that I can just be a part of, the little voice in everyone's head, as you guys make those decisions. I still hear Wiley's voice. I still hear Greg's voice, even as I've stepped into sort of this new role. So, at maybe at a topical level, I think it's worth thinking about, like, what is Web3's purpose right now? I think that's a question a lot of us are trying to answer in our own unique ways. Web3 has proven to be really great at getting rid of financial friction. And so you see, the hyperliquids of the world, we see the Astros of the world, we see Dexes and Sexes and, all of those doing what they kind of were expected to do. Frankly, they use blockchain as a technology, and it is a value provider for all of them. And we've also seen crypto and blockchain be really good at, creating speculative hype and creating sort of new mechanics, whether you call them, gaming mechanics or gambling mechanics. It is allowed sort of the psychographic profile of what we as people on, sort of terminally online are looking for. We're looking for that dopamine drip. And that's one version of it. And there seems to be, to me, like a pretty big gap between like full financialization, hyper financialization, of using blockchain, maybe even eating the TradFi's lunch or soon to. And the other side, which is like the full vice world of, let's just throw in as little as we can and give ourselves the best chance to win as much as we can. And if we can sort of flip those odds into a guarantee because of, various Kabbalistic mechanisms, like, go for it. To me, that leaves like a massive spectrum and opportunity that, everyone on this call, including are trying to step into, and there's a lot of things that I think we could sort of break apart, along that spectrum. I think there's a reason why Web3 has gravitated towards, the ideas of, peer-to-peer sharing, which is streaming in a lot of ways. We've gravitated towards gaming because that's something that is, either individual or peer-to-peer, but is, sort of tech-based and has become native to what we all do. I think we have gravitated towards creating new brands and new IPs because, we come from a generation where, all of that is digitally native itself. And so why not propagate it in a digital forum? Those aren't the only ways I think that, someone can attack the question here, but, there's some of the ways. And so, I think starting and, zooming out to that lens and recognizing in this moment, despite there's 100 tokens worth more than $500 million or whatever, despite the fact that crypto is worth $3 trillion, I think the landscape of opportunity is as big as it has ever been. The second piece to that, to me, and, I'll get off my soapbox in a second and Ryan can, reframe all this, is while the opportunity landscape is huge, sadly, I think crypto in a lot of ways has, sort of narrowed, the idealism of the early days. I remember when I was getting into crypto and blockchain in 2016 and 2017, I was a lawyer at the time. The clients that were calling me saying they wanted to, to use the blockchain were people that were trying to upend how movies get made and financed, how we help musicians get paid their royalties and interact with fans, how sports are distributed to fans, end consumers. They were thinking about, how do you create, new sort of products for companies that are physically, physical products, consumer products. Like what is a digital forum for you to interact, to loyalty and stickiness. And now when I talk to projects so often, the first thing that they're saying to me is, essentially, this is going to make money because, and I'm thinking, before we talk about making money, like, let's talk about the idea. Let's talk about how big it can be. People that have heard me on Spaces before, I've talked about the fact that, like, often at the end of when someone's pitching me, I'll be like, but what's the bigger version of this idea? Because if there isn't a bigger one, my personal opinion is you shouldn't go for this one. You should only take a step, in a direction where you feel like there's a bigger step to be taken, after that. And so, I also want to encourage everyone, as you start thinking about this, this vibe coding camp, as whatever step you want to take here, make sure that there's a way bigger leap, that there's maybe even like a bit of a scary sort of off the cliff level leap in possibilities. Otherwise, start with a new idea.
Yeah, I love it. And I think the question of what is Web3 good at, or what is possible with crypto, is a good one. Because yeah, similarly, Cam, I think we came into the space with a lot of idealism around. We had city devs putting cities on the blockchain, with full governance mechanisms and asset buying and DeFi, and stuff like that. But a lot of that has kind of died down into I'm going to do an NFT project. I'm going to launch a token. We even call token developer or like token launchers devs in this space, which is like crazy because they pushed a button, right? And they aren't devs. Like they're not building in that bigger idea that Cam was talking about, that swing for the fence, that scary leap that you have to necessarily take in kind of product development sometimes. But I think what can crypto do is also usually a good framing, that you see in product ideation when new spaces are coming into development. You see this with AI now, is everybody just like is now an AI app. And like, are they really? They just like layered on like a chatbot to their database, and now you can kind of interact with it and you're like, oh, AI, right? But they're trying to claim this. There will be ways in which AI redefines value for the consumer experience. And so sometimes a good starting point is what exists today? What can I add AI to? But if it's just adding AI or crypto, in this case, blockchain, for the sake of adding blockchain, you're not creating real value. But if blockchain, through its hyper financialization, through decentralization mechanisms and cutting out middlemen, through other ways, can improve the value proposition for consumers, then I think you have real value. So don't get stuck in the trap of I'm just adding blockchain to something and calling it a day. Yeah, that could be a good starting point, but like Cam said, find the value differentiator that like creates the bigger business model here. And then kind of the last thing I'll say before I kind of turn it back to Cam is, think of when you're building product, you're building not for yourself, even though sometimes the pain point that you experience becomes like a solution you try and build. So, maybe a common pain point that people experience here in crypto is there's so much noise out in the space. I have so many NFTs. I have so many tokens. I don't know when whitelist claims are. I don't know when, somebody has a drop that I need to pay attention to. So, I see this idea a lot. Can we centralize some sort of notification system based on all the assets I hold that, so this is a problem that we all experience that we want to go build a solution to. But you're not just building for yourself, you're building for others when you create a product. So if your product only creates value for you or only creates some small subset of value for the market as a whole, your product's going to fall flat on its face. So like Cam said, don't start with just here's how we're going to make a bunch of money. Start with here is the pain point we're solving for a customer, and here's the story we're going to tell with our solution that, creates a business here.
Yeah, I think it's all all really well said, Ryan. And I would obviously be remiss to sort of say like that every idea has a bigger version, or that everyone will be taking this this vibe coding camp for the purposes of like changing their career and becoming a founder, an entrepreneur. Like some people, you're doing this because it's a side project, it's a hobby, it's an interest. In that case, like don't let sort of what I'm saying about the possibilities reduce your excitement about pursuing your own interests. I think if I had to distill sort of that message to somebody here who's more of a hobbyist, it's really thinking about like continue to think about why is it that you are pursuing this component of your hobby. How does this sort of relate into the bigger activity that a hobby actually brings for you? What is the purpose of a hobby, right? Is it to bring joy? Is it to bring activity? Is it for health and wellness? Is it for connection to other people? All those things can play out in your idea, even if it sort of feels like a smaller version of it. So the second thing that I would say is like I think there's a lot of opportunities in crypto or in business generally to make money off of really boring ideas, and I will not fault anyone for going after the boring version. We've all heard about how private equity is buying up blue collar businesses and just turning them into cash cows. We've all heard about how infrastructure partners in crypto are actually some of the most successful people out there because they do the grunt work that no one else wants to do. Anyone who wants to go into infrastructure, anyone who wants to go into a blue collar version of it in crypto, like by all means go for it. That's not for me. I've never been that person. For me, I really do believe that passion has to be that first feeling when you come up with an idea. Like if your voice doesn't go up a little bit, if the pace of your speech doesn't go up, it doesn't quicken a little bit when you're talking about it. Honestly, if those things, body is not reacting to the idea, to the possibility, to the moment that you're sort of having, thinking, is this something? Then I would not pursue it. I'm lucky enough that I have really great friends, who I've sat around for 20 plus years with. I have a dumbass long email chain, that's just like, is this a good idea? Is this a good idea? Is this a good idea? So, if you are not in a position yet to know sort of whether it's just passion or is it passion for something that, your brain is saying is also good, also think about who are the voices that you trust, who you can sort of bounce these ideas by, because, once you settle in on something and you have that passion, like you will chase as hard as you possibly can. And we've seen a lot of people in this space share what seems like a good idea, and yet they fall off because they clearly aren't willing or ready or capable of going through the obstacles. Like it is not going to be a clean shot of step A to step B, of 0 to 1 or 1 to 10. Like you're going to sort of have to go, in these curves. And so I'm sure I'm not saying anything that isn't in every sort of management, McKinsey book about like what being a founder is, but like I've lived it, I breathed it. Like I went from being a lawyer with no passion to being, a guy in crypto with more passion than I know what to do with. Sadly, I think Ryan and the team know from all my very early messages, like I don't know how to quite contain it. And I would hope on everyone on this call, like whatever idea you come up with, you feel the same.
Yeah, no, I really like that, and Cam definitely does bring that passion in every conversation I've ever had with him. And it's not every idea that he shoots me turns into something we build on ApeChain or ApeCoin too, right? Like there's
you're being kind. You're being kind. I appreciate that.
No, but I think it's important for them to understand, right? Like not every idea you'll have is a good one. And one of the powers of AI is that it allows us to test them very quickly. So this is one of my favorite things about vibe coding that you'll find out is potentially through this camp, before you like really hone in on something, you might test 2 or 3 ideas, because guess what? AI allows us to prototype that quickly something to kind of a visual state or a value state where we can have some interactions with real customers where we can determine if this is something valuable to us or not. And I'll be starting a concurrent session to this kind of official vibe camp called From Vibe to Viable, where for the next 10 weeks starting next week I'll be be coding an app a week on ApeChain using some of our kind of infra tools that we have available to us. So hopefully this will give you a sense that week to week, even, you can be playing with stuff until you find something that really hits for you. And I think we've seen some good examples of that within the ecosystem. King Pickle being, one of those people that he put out Dem Witches, he's put out a tower defense game, he's put out, his trading platforms and stuff like that. So, you have the ability to iterate really quickly and get to, what some of those better ideas are with AI. And even before building it and putting it into like vibe coding tools, ChatGPT and stuff are great things to bounce ideas off of and, do market analysis against with their deep research function to see if there's like a bigger opportunity there. So AI can even help you ideate or maybe take your idea and make it more viable down the road. But Cam, I want to maybe pivot the discussion a little bit to ApeChain and ApeCoin specifically. What have we seen, or maybe you've seen throughout your time in crypto, that has informed the types of app experiences that you think will be successful on a blockchain and integrating kind of the utility of the coin in a way that like uplifts our entire ecosystem? So this is like what do we think would be good products in our ecosystem, but also what are some of the categories that people could maybe think about as they ideate that would maybe give them a bit of structure to start with?
Yeah, it's such a key question. I'll say, broad, I like to think of ApeChain, and I like to think of all of us. We're still at the forefront, we're still cutting edge, and so I want ApeChain to be, and particularly I want everyone here to be to think of themselves a little bit as a mad scientist. Like, part of the benefit of using AI, as Ryan's talking about, is the fact that like you can test out 100 versions of something relatively quickly compared to old. And what I think will differentiate people as we democratize sort of tech in this way, what will differentiate people is taste and sort of innovation and the ability to identify like why people gravitate towards something. And I think there's a little bit of something in all of us that's why we're here. That's why we all loved the club before we sort of even knew, is like we all want to sort of believe on some philosophical way that there's like some normal, like there's something that is considered normal, and yet we are all sort of partially not it. And I think that's actually the biggest superpower here. It's like you have this sort of experimental, innovative, weird sense of self, or that we all should, have that. And I think really exploring that is what makes product in crypto successful and interesting, because we are in an attention sort of economy right now. And so to gather attention, there's some stuff that like sadly we're seeing, which is like on streaming, people doing like crazy things or dangerous things or just like stuff that is sort of over the top. But then we're seeing, experimental stuff like what Jack Butcher just put out yesterday, where it's like an entirely new method of interacting, with, sort of performative art, as a group. And so, that sort of experimental sense to me is actually a mechanism for capturing that attention. And I think that we often see people sort of going from chain to chain, like, well, this was successful on another chain, let me build it here. I don't know if that's going to win, and I would hope that people see through that as an opportunity. So for ApeChain, categorically, like, I want to see a bunch of mad scientists. I want to see weird shit. I want to see experimental stuff. It doesn't have to be sort of the winner of all winners, but like definitely try something new. I think where that plays out, really where I would want to see that playing out is really categorically. I think SocialFi is an area that crypto like has tried to break in and tried to make changes and tried to provide new layers of connectivity and like hasn't. We've financialized a lot of those and we yet have sort of not actually created deeper connection. And if you ever, hear from, the early days of BAYC, like part of it was like, it was meant to bring people together because like we were all lonely, and like the internet is actually a lonely place unless you give it layers. And I think crypto is a lonely place unless we provide new tools that make the internet feel more real and less sort of, 2D. So SocialFi, I think, is an amazing place for people to be playing with. I think gaming is, it's a massive category, but I do think that it has the chance to be really sticky. And I really focus on games that like is something that people, want to go back to on a daily basis, either from a competitive place. LinkedIn, Ryan and I talked about this like a month ago. I was like, all of a sudden LinkedIn published, your friend Brett, it took him only 18 seconds to finish this puzzle. How fast can you do it? And I, of course, did that fucking puzzle for like a whole week, like just because I was like, I'm going to try and beat him every day. So I think that level of sort of competition, but in like a friendly way, in a personal growth way, is super interesting in the gaming space. I'm not a big gamer, so I'm not here to sit and say AAA versus AA versus single versus casual. But I think if you can create something where people want to share in a slightly competitive way with their friends, it has a real chance, to succeed. I think lastly, I've seen the chat sort of going around RWA. I fucking hate, I'm sorry to keep cursing, I shouldn't do that, but I hate that term. So like setting aside the fact that RWA is just an ugly acronym that is going to sort of become passe like NFT was, I do think, testing the ways in which we interact with physical product on chain, is good, but that doesn't mean like, great, let's just put every physical product on chain so that it's tradable or that it's trackable. Like, I really like to think about why does sort of something becoming a digital version of itself actually add value to the product, right? And we think about that from like a consumer engagement perspective. Like, can they do something new with this product? We think about it from a collector's perspective. Is this something that people are going to want to now capture and be able to show off and demonstrate to people? We think about it from a just strictly from the attention economy. Like, we all live in this space where we have like, we take pictures of ourselves to show what we have, but like, why is film the only version of that? So yeah, Web3 Gatsby, storytelling fi is kind of a funny, version of that. So I think, social fi, gaming, and I do think physical product, but like leveraging it so that the digital is an extension of physical rather than just a duplication, is where I'd really love to see ApeChain go.
Awesome. Yeah. When I think about ApeChain, I really think of us as a culture chain, and that's comes out of some of the experimentation that, came from Bases earlier days and, then extended into ApeCo and stuff, and I think it reflects in the partners that you see working with ApeChain on a daily basis, like ComplexCon being, us being the blockchain partner is really cool there, and opens up a lot of opportunity to reach sectors that we don't reach and talk to. So my big comment here is crypto Twitter is the smallest subsection of people. We think it's like the entire world of crypto happening out there. It's not. Like, you go talk to any normie about crypto, they have no idea who Thread Guy is, who any of these people are on this thing. So we let these influencers in our little kind of space dictate too much how we build, what we think about, the market and things like that, instead of thinking about what real people care about and want to see out of products, on a day-to-day basis. So when, I think of categories, and it's partly just because I come from streetwear backgrounds and collector backgrounds, I think we're seeing streaming be really popular, but I think of different ways in which streaming like changes different categories of verticals. So social shopping for me is a huge area that I think is going to be incredibly big. So if you think of what platforms and stuff like that, those on crypto rails would pop off, I think, incredibly well. Things that deal with secondary shoe markets like StockX and Goat, like, is a readily thing because it's a secondary market where, like Cam said, what's the value of having that physical product on the blockchain? Well, it's tracking the supply chain to ensure authenticity, so you're not getting, fakes from StockX itself that was supposed to verify all of these things for you as a service. You can guarantee it comes directly from X Factory into this person was the first person to buy it and things like that. And, cutting out middlemen technology like that creates value within the supply chain. So, that's a culture product, but it, really is kind of a boring soups and nuts business of disrupting the supply chain of secondary sneaker sales with, this. So, I think, when I think of categories that I think Cam's categories are really great, that's what I think of as more of the consumer products that I would love to see is like, who can we get to care about something that has never onboarded into the crypto ecosystem before, and then not only care but stick around and do something. We have the tech which will teach you about how to use glyph so they can just sign in with Gmail and things like this. And it creates an embedded wallet. You don't even have to know you have a wallet. You just have a profile with some assets in it. So the tech is at a place now where we can deliver consumer experiences at scale. We just have to think about, once again, value statements to that consumer base. Because if you say, come here and spend a bunch of money to people that don't want to gamble, and that's your only value proposition, then we're not, creating value with the blockchain here. So, but yeah, I would love to see, a lot of things in the categories that Cam explained. I think you'll see a lot of games. I'll agree with that because games are, a great use case for vibe coding, but also, there's mini games like dopamine hits, small dopamine hits that are important. Just like Cam said, not everything has to be big, even though, if you want to build a business out of it, it needs to have that bigger angle. But sometimes the best thing is you can get 1 million users playing Flappy Bird, right? We've seen that in Web 2. And I think that's a good translation to Web 3 because what do all those Web 2 games have? They have microeconomies, right? We buy candy to get sugar to get, more things in Candy Crush or whatever. I don't know. I don't play Candy Crush, but like you buy things in games to win that game, right? So crypto is really great to put on those rails. But people are used to that spending habit. So it's not like you're introducing them to NFT mints or burning stuff or DeFi mechanisms. You're literally just introducing them to something that they already kind of have a mental model for, but where crypto can deliver more value.
I think that's really well said. And I'll sort of add 2 notes there. I think where you talk about, culture on chain, obviously that's, what you're hearing me talk about is much more tactical than philosophical. Like Ape Chain is, we do think, becoming the undercurrent of culture on chain, and part of how we're approaching it is like there are the big things that we are doing, whether it's with our partners, at F1, whether people have seen on the timeline recently, some of the music, partnerships that we've, been working on. Those are things that demonstrate like in a big global way, and to the people out there that, may have sort of turned a little bit away from crypto, like, hey, there's a much safer environment to come back to. It's not just boom and bust of tokens. But, culture sort of at an underpinning layer has the same importance. Like we have to show people what it is, that you can do in crypto, that you can do on the blockchain, that is interesting, that is fun. And I think that plays, we talk about culture, it plays on like an emotions level, right? Like, why we are doing these things, what is attractive about it, what is interesting about it is really driven by like the emotion. And like, so Ryan and I actually share, one of the drivers for both of us on product that is super powerful is nostalgia, right? We talk about that all the time, right? That it's like the sort of the nostalgic component of a product is actually what draws us in. And we think about how can we layer that on. And so I encourage everyone to think about like taking the idea of culture and like breaking that into an emotional layer. Like, well, what about culture sort of brings you? I think about how I was as a teenager and as I was in my early 20s, and like sort of understanding for the first time what culture meant to me. And like, I still gravitate towards that period. I think the other thing, and this gets back more to the tactical side, is like, as you're thinking about what you want to build, one of the real benefits of building in crypto, and particularly building part of an ecosystem like, like ours, which is so strong and so connected, is everything that you guys build can ultimately, hopefully, ladder into a meta layer that we can play with. So some of the things that Ryan and I talk about is like, how can we tap into all the things you guys build and then sort of create a layer on top of it, like a participation layer, like a loyalty layer, like a XP layer. And so as you think about the product you're building, think about, who can tap in, what could they tap in to do with that? And, hopefully, using AI makes it a lot easier to sort of identify the hooks that are necessary to do that. But like, think about that. If you are building a product that can't really be tapped into and calculated in that way, that doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that there's limitations that, other products might not have.
Yeah, and I want to go back to that emotional layer statement. So the other way I think about what Cam was talking about with like emotional resonance really is what drew you to the space. Like, I think that's a really good place to start. And I think for, a lot of people, it was an experience like Top Shot or something, right? Because they collected baseball or sports cards growing up or basketball cards. And, it was an easy, once again, mental leap for them to see, oh yeah, I see value here. You're seeing it with Pokemon cards today. So I would say a big part of what drives people to, crypto in their background or their past was they were collectors at some point. So they understand the value of collection, rarity, authenticity, things like that. Same with like you see a lot of sneakerheads and stuff in this space. So, think about the different, ways in which people come into this space. And, I think it's because they were collectors, because they want financial freedom, right? Because they kind of want to protect their own assets and see the value of kind of owning their own assets, because they support decentralization, right? And they want to see more decentralized or centralized modes of doing things. And, I think that's another way of thinking about product ideation and value creation is think about centralized networks, and that's where the SocialFi statement comes from. And that's why this space is like banging against that problem so hard, is because we, for 25 plus years now, have been farmed by social networks, creating all of the value for the network, but only seeing those companies get the financial value out of it because they sell us ads, and then they're affecting our psychology, and then you get brain rot, and we have algos in the state that they do. I think that's why people are so passionate about SocialFi, is because they see something wrong there that can be solved with decentralization and giving back powers of creator control. Something I built, as a prototype, and that Cam and I talk about a lot is, owning your content. Like, just simple, like, how do you do asset management of your blogs, your videos, your, like things like that. And, can you create content repositories that are blocked by that, and maybe create a new Jiffy or a new image repository that people do licensing off of for creative content, but that ties back to the creator of that original meme, that original content piece. So, it goes back to what are those philosophical things that maybe are philosophical at first, but lead to very concrete ideas when you think about the application of them against different industries or different, things that you, participate in today from an app or ecosystem perspective. All right. So I want to open it up to, any specific questions that you guys have, and we'll, make sure we're monitoring chats here. I know there's been a lot of, reposts of the stream, and we appreciate kind of the attention during this session. We appreciate having Cam's time, as well, because we know it's, so valuable across everything that he's working on. But yeah, if we would like to kind of have some specific questions, we would love to do that.
So let's get a handful here of questions and comments that would like to run to you guys. Amazing masterclass of project ideation and go-to-market. Thank you very much for this content. I'm going to go over some of these that I selected, but also we have the live chat, very active. Thank you everyone that it's following. First of all, agent was mentioned that this is a cheat code using the agent for the ideation process, right? What do you guys think about this?
Yeah, I think I made that comment, and so I'll start, and then Cam can give his insight. We're all becoming more comfortable with using ChatGPT or Claude or any of these different models in our lives. Google, it's all baked into our phones and our assistants, and we've even had kind of assistants like Google Assistant, Siri, like as models without AI backing them for a while. But now you're seeing it in search results and things like that. All AI, the cheat code to using AI is being comfortable having a human conversation, actually, which sounds really weird. But I think it's the same thing that search engines evolved through over the years. So and this is going to date me a bit, but when you first started using these search engines back in the day, you would have to be very prescriptive in how you search to get the right types of pages to show up. So there was all these modifiers that you would have to use. You would have to use parentheses and things like that to group content, and it was very machine talk. Now and then over the years, search engines were like, wait, humans don't ask questions that way. Like the way they ask questions is what's the nearest food place near me where I am now, right? So they're asking contextual questions based on their context, and they're asking it in a human way. AI has extended that, but I think the biggest barrier to AI is people think that it's something that they have to learn, right? You don't have to learn anything new. You have to learn how to ask the right questions, right? And so, even when you're ideating, I think there's levels to it, similar to the levels people can get out of Google search results and things like that. You could say, hey, what are 3 ideas I can build in crypto, right? And you're going to get probably a very generic vertical type response, and that could help you. But if you stop there, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. One, I don't think you asked the right initial question, but two, the trick to kind of getting the most value out of AI is to keep asking why. There's this famous book by Simon Sinek, the 5 whys, and the key to any problem is continuing to ask why. So it gives you an answer, and you're like, why is that the best crypto product to evolve? And then it'll give you some reasoning behind why it says that. You're like, okay, cool, but why would a consumer care about this market problem statement or something like that? And you're going to get a little more detail. So it's a cheat code, but there's levels to this cheat code. Just like Cam said, now that anybody can build anything, the real differentiator is how you can capture attention and tell a story and market that thing. Similarly, as you're ideating, using AI, everybody has access to it. Everybody can ask their AI bot to give them ideas, but you're all going to build the same 10 products, because if you all ask just what should we build in crypto, it's going to give you the same 10 answers across these platforms, and we're going to get a lot of the same ideas. So when you think about even ideation and ADI, think about asking the right question, but also continuing to push it for more detail to really get to something valuable there. Cam, I don't know if you have any other insights into using AI within ideation or.
No, I think you said it really well. I mean, I said earlier in the call, I have a group of friends that, for 20 years I've spent, I don't know how many hours just bouncing ideas back and forth, in text and email, sitting at our favorite pizza place. Ironically, that's kind of what my AI, friends are now. I can just do it at any time and anywhere, but I talk to them the same way. I even share, I'm like, well, if you are a person who's more risk averse, less risk averse, I almost think about who my friends are, who are the voices that I've trusted for a long time. And then I'm like, can you share from this sort of perspective, how you might look at this problem or how you might respond to this idea, and I think that is, the value is it gives you such a tight feedback loop. Now, I will also say, don't take it as gospel. Like, it is really easy to look at it and be like, if this says it's not a good idea or says it is a good idea or this is the direction you go, it's like very easy to be like, great, the computer has told me. But like, still trust your instincts. Like, figure out what resonates with you. Like, this is a tool, it's not a solution necessarily. Maybe we might get there when, when it becomes, more intelligent than us, which, whatever, what is that, the singularity or whatever, like, or takeoff or something. We'll get there, but like until that day, until sort of, the overlords come, like use it as a tool for yourself, and sort of be honest with yourself. Like, this is a way that you can very quietly ask all the questions that you probably don't want to ask somebody else. Like, is this a dumb idea? Is this, would my friends be, think this is a good idea? Would like investors like this idea? Like, it's a place to explore the insecurity, and vulnerability of like the ideation process. Like, we are all sort of a little, creative and artists in that sense. And like, that's probably one of the hardest parts. This lets us do it for free.
Yeah, and I think AI, you can tell it what persona it is. And you could have different chats with different personas. So when I'm building a project, I usually have a project folder for that. And then I have different AI agents for like marketing it, ideation with it, product development with it, and stuff like that. And you can tell it, hey, I need you to be this type of person with this type of experience, with this lens of view, and get feedback from that lens of view, which is really powerful. So I think I saw a really good question here around, let's see, where was it? So, Cam, the question is from Croc, and it says, what are your thoughts on the best way to break out of our echo chamber? Is there anything that you've seen, across the activations that we've done or in general in crypto that, help us break out of kind of this little space we're in?
Yeah, I think there's like the micro version of the answer, which is like, if we're staying still within the broader echo chamber of crypto Twitter, but how do we break out of sort of the smaller silo of just Ape Chain or, the club or any of that? There's an answer sort of at that level, and there's an answer at, the global level. I think, the answer at sort of the smaller level is really storytelling. Like, there are very few products that sell themselves, right? Sometimes there are things you just absolutely need, and that's like fine. But for the most part, you have to find a storytelling angle. Like, even if you think about like, oh my God, the word just went out of my head. The sponge with the smile. What is it? Happy. What?
SpongeBob.
No, literally like oh my God, this is embarrassing. The guy literally lives 2 towns over. What, if you think about sort of some of the products that you're like, who came up with this idea and like, why is it good? And oftentimes it's because the total good story about why you need it, why you want it, why it's, something to aspire for. And I think like part of why Wheel of Fate was successful, and it did break out of like our smaller, silo chamber and into broader crypto Twitter, was like, it was a good, interesting story. You didn't know everything that was going to happen. You didn't quite know how all the pieces came together. And I think that, on some of the different categories we've talked about where like, we'd hope the vibe coding takes some of you guys, like that storytelling exercise can be really powerful mechanism. I think something else, like when we're thinking about the broader macro question, is frankly like just completely start with a 0 to 1. I think everyone's like, well, I got to create a Twitter. I got to just like tell people on Twitter. Honestly, don't tell anyone on Twitter. Like, one of the best things that can happen to a product is when somebody on Twitter is like, hey, I just found this. Like, what's going on? Like, is this something interesting? And they're finding it from an outside source and then bringing it back into our own community and saying, wait, this is on chain. Like, you don't have to necessarily start in crypto Twitter. And I actually would recommend that you don't, because crypto Twitter has some weird financialization, incentivization mechanics that skew answers. Oftentimes we see a lot of money thrown at really broadly bad ideas and little money thrown at really good ideas. The outside world doesn't work the same. And so sometimes starting outside actually gives you way more of an understanding about what could happen inside than vice versa.
Yeah. And my quick answer is not everything needs to be on crypto rails, but when I think of how do we break out of our ecosystem, I just think about the apps in the mobile app store that I use on a daily basis, that most people use on a daily basis. I know most people, like the average is like they have 100 apps downloaded, but they probably log into like 8 every single day, and it's the same ones. It's social experiences. How do I connect with other people, talk to them, exchange information and ideas? So that's where you get your socialify stuff from. There's the I would call lifestyle things. How do I build habits or tasks around working out or cooking or things like that. There's the how do I get food and goods and services, so delivery, supply chain, logistics, things like that. There's the finance apps, my banking apps, where I need to do money transfers on Venmo, things like that. So like there's a handful of categories of apps that normies care about and use on a daily basis, and it's probably why we haven't seen a lot of new development even in the app stores. Like if you look at the app stores, like it's the same like clones of the same games that were popular 10 years ago. And the part of the reason for that is, and it's partially because of AI, product development is commoditized right now. Anybody can build a product these days. And, I'll say that like with relative confidence, if you're trying to compete on like feature set, you're going to lose. You have to compete on like that storytelling value. You have to compete on like how you're delivering product market fit. So I know one of the questions here is, how do you move from like a product idea to testing it? Some of that will be covered by PP-Man in the how do you find product market fit section of the sessions that we do. And, I'll provide some insight there too, MRN, on some DMs and back chats. But, I think that's really key here is, kind of testing that, but, doing it with like a real audience and things. So, and then I think just one more question. Brongos, I saw you say, do you need to train AI to be that type of person? No, you just usually, so there's like in ChatGPT, there's like a global setting with your account where you can set AI should always respond to me in these ways, like, short sentences with facts backing it, whatever you want to make sure AI gives you, you can kind of create those global parameters. But every time you set up an individual chat, just start the chat with, yo, you're a social media manager with 15 years of experience. By the way, I'm validating this social idea. Here's what's up. And that's all the training you need to do for that model.
I just want to touch on, so I'm seeing in some of the chat here talking about, storytelling, and sort of responding to what we're talking about, live. I just want to, I want to identify, I want to sort of delineate that, like, I don't see storytelling as separate from the product. I think it is a core component of the product. Like when we think about Wheel of Fate, I don't look at Wheel of Fate as like the ball minting, burning, prize layer. Like the product was a sort of game-based multimodal experience where you had to experience it both, on a website and on Twitter, watching a story play out. Like to me, that was the product. And so when I talk about storytelling, it's not to say that like, hey, come up with a product and then, layer a story on top of it or create marketing around it. It's really start with like a story and think about, what products sort of fit narratives. Like, and that doesn't mean you can't go and vice versa, but I find that to be actually something, much more, interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Any other kind of question? Yeah, so I think let's touch on this last thing and then we'll, end the session today. So there is this question around product market fit. Like, so we have a lot of ideas. Maybe even before you get to building something, you want to get a little product market fit test, so you can, decide, okay, I want to do this idea versus this idea. I think there's a couple of ways to do that. And yeah, there's no magic formula for it, even though people say, usually if you ask people, hey, I have this product that you use on a daily basis. If I took that product away from you, how upset would you be? And if 40% or more people say extremely upset, you're so ingrained in their lives that like you have product market fit. That's like the startup definition from the textbook, the kids see textbooks and things like that of what product market fit is, right? So I think what even before product market fit, is problem solution fit. So, and that's what you're trying to do within the product ideation process. You're trying to identify a problem that has enough of a market associated with it. And this is where you often see people talking TAM, SAM, SOM, things like that. But really, it's just like, gut check, like, is there a lot of money here or not, or a lot of customers that experience the same thing that I do? And what you're testing for is there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat in the product ideation process. What you're testing for is the best mousetrap or way to skin the cat, right? Like you could build a mobile app. You could build a IRL experience that solves that problem. You could do workflow automation. You could build infrastructure that allows other people to build it into their apps that solves that problem. I think that's the thing you need to be doing during the product ideation stage, is less worried about product market fit. That will come once you start building and getting stuff into people's hands. But really think about problem solution fit. What is the right solution to this problem? And that's where I think crypto goes wrong, and where you've seen so many people just go, oh, I'm just going to put it on the blockchain or mint an NFT or add a token behind it, when there's no value creation there. Where, the things that really kick off bull runs are, like Top Shed or the Yacht Club, because it created a new social experience where people were feeling lonely at that time, and recreated how we connect on the internet with each other, through NFTs, not as the NFT was ever the product to begin with, right? It was the club was the product. And so, think about like those things a little bit, a lot. All right, Cam, any final words from you?
Yeah, just want to touch on one thing. I'm just watching the chat, and I love it. I love to see sort of the back and forth, the energy. I see Pedro is sharing a lot of good thoughts around product market fit. One thing I know People Man will touch on, and I'll just share my thoughts before that session, is that product market fit is often talked about as like a point in time, right? It's like there's a threshold, you hit it, you meet it, you therefore now have product market fit. To me, product market fit is a process. There will be points where product market fit is demonstrated by different outcomes, at different times. Like product market fit can actually be demonstrated by like traction to start. It may not be revenue to start. It may be traction, it may be user growth, it may be user adoption, user stickiness, right? It's demonstrating that the market has accepted this is a product that's valuable. Separately, you may have to then go through a fit of how do you calibrate the product to best balance the market need for it with the sort of the value that you can generate for yourself from it. And so I would just caution everyone here, as you think about product market fit, don't look at it solely as like, am I being financially successful? That is the long-term goal, and you should always build with that in mind if you're trying to build a business. But don't miss all the earlier steps that can give you a lot of really healthy directional data about whether you'll get to product market fit. If all you are doing is looking at revenue, and I'm not suggesting that, Pedro, this is what you're saying, but, I just thought you brought a really interesting conversation to the board. If all you are sort of looking at is like, have I generated enough revenue? Is my revenue growing or not? I think that it's, we're probably looking at some of the data set. So the other thing, just to tie out this whole conversation, is how good AI is at helping you understand and identify data and trends, and insights. So use that, not just in the product ideation phase, use that not just in the product build phase, but use that to also understand, is my business on the right track? Is my product going the right way? How does it compare against competitors? That's all insight that, you will then filter right back in. Products out, you're still ideating, you're still furthering the development, you're going to still keep doing it. So I just want to thank everyone for showing up, across time zones. People are probably on phones, some are computers. I know this is never easy, to bring sort of global audience together like that. But it to me just reflects just how good of a job we as a community are doing to lift each other up, to support, and to try and remain at the forefront here. So thank you guys. It has been a real pleasure. I appreciate it, Ryan. Appreciate it, Matheus.
Yeah, thank you, Cam, for the time today. Thanks everybody, all the builders. Like, we wouldn't be here without you guys. You guys are the reason this class is keep going on. It has such good engagement. We've had such great reception. And we're just genuinely excited to see all the great things come to life from, your ideas. Like, we get DMs all the time of amazing things that our community wants to build. And I think you'll have the chance to with kind of the vibe coding skills that you get from this camp. So, really excited that, Cam was able to join us. I know we got a lot of other really great people. The last thing I'll say is a lighthearted note. Be aware of AI too. I think Cam brought it up earlier. There's a great South Park episode from this season called Sycophancy, where Randy needs to save his business, and it keeps telling him that he has the best ideas in the world about the business, and it's obviously just sucking up to him. So, make sure you kind of like have that angle too of like, it is a tool, and you still need to validate that tool outside of the tool itself. But yeah, excited to see product ideation, what you come up with. Matheus, thank you to Venture Miner for hosting this whole thing, and we'll see y'all later.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Cam, for coming. Thank you, Ryan. It was amazing.
Yes.
Let's see what crazy ideas get built in this camp.
Look forward to it.
Sounds good. Cheers.
Yep.